What are the two big problems with Australian politics? Like when you really get down to it, yeah, there's debates about asylum seekers, yeah, there's debates about climate change, yeah, there's debates about tax and economy and bureaucracy. When you really get down to it, there's just two problems. The first problem is that you've got a bunch of people in Canberra who have corruption of purpose or just straight out corruption. Corruption of purpose. You elect them to represent you, to go to Canberra, fight in your corner. Instead, they fight for their mates. The other problem is the growing power of the international secrecy state. We now have a situation where all Australians' communications done over the internet are spied upon by Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, etc., all in collaboration with the National Security Agency. What's common amongst both of these? Well, common amongst both of these is lack of accountability, lack of transparency. They can do it, they can engage in these plans, and you can't tell. The end result is a lack of justice.
All right, so let's talk about running for Senate. I know you broached the idea before you were in the Ecuadorian embassy, but now how much of this campaign is about keeping your plight in the public eye to embarrass the Australian government?
Well, there's a personal element to it. The personal element is that I have seen what happens when push comes to shove in relation to Canberra's sucking up to the US.
I absolutely condemn the placement of this information on the Wikileaks website. It's a grossly irresponsible thing to do.
The Australian Labor government started a whole-of-government investigation, and it tried to cancel my passport, and it tasked the Australian government lawyers looking into whether I could be prosecuted with treason. So that's a real corruption of purpose. The Australian government's purpose is to defend Australians. And when you go through something like that yourself, you start to recognise the phenomena.
This email from Fred Burton, a senior VP at the security firm Stratfor, was obtained by Wikileaks back in 2011. And it seems to indicate that the US have got a sealed indictment against Assange. It's because of the fear of being whisked into US custody that Assange refuses to return to Sweden to answer questions about sexual misconduct, and a political office might just bolster his chances.
I think it would make it harder politically for the US to continue its pursuit of Wikileaks, the organisation, and me personally.
But there's also just like a logistics thing in terms of getting sworn in. Don't you need to physically be in front of the Governor-General?
Actually, if you follow all the tendrils, you see that the Australian Constitution says that you can run for office from overseas. And if there's a situation where you can't actually get back to take up your Senate seat, which I wouldn't have to do until next September, then in that case, if you're part of a political party, then the seat will go to the person you nominate in the political party, which we've stated is Binoy Kampamaki.
Except that candidate was supposed to be this woman. Leslie Canold was the most high-profile local candidate for the Wikileaks party until she and a slew of others, including Daniel Matthews, a co-founder of Wikileaks itself, resigned after Wikileaks gave surprisingly high preferences to far right-wing parties in New South Wales and surprisingly low preferences to long-time Wikileaks supporters, the Greens, in WA. Now, in New South Wales, they maintained that it was an error, but differing accounts feature reports of factionalism, a lack of communication, and a divisive autocratic structure with Julian as the approving vote on all preference decisions. The problem was, according to some, he just wasn't available enough to be autocratic.
So I over-delegated in that situation. I should have been stronger. I made a decision 2 months ago to delegate more of their campaign to people in Australia because I had something important to do. And that was to save a young man's life, Edward Snowden. And we work like dogs to do that, sending people even from Australia who were helping with their campaign to Hong Kong, sending people with his flight to Russia. So you might ask yourself, yeah, but Julian, what does that have to do with Australia? Well, this has everything to do with Australia. All Australians' data is being intercepted by the National Security Agency if they use the internet. That's an issue that affects the future of Western democracy.
The most famous WikiLeaker, Bradley Manning, or technically Chelsea Manning now that she's shifted her gender, has just been sentenced to 35 years in prison. I'm wondering if you could say anything to Manning right now, what would it be?
Stick in there, don't give up hope, keep fighting. transformation from Bradley to Chelsea, of course, is, he's reclaiming his ability to control his life. He has no control anywhere else, and he's gained control in that way. It was Bradley Manning that was convicted. It's Bradley Manning that's been sentenced, but it's not Chelsea Manning.
As you look around the world, it's hard not to acknowledge the power of Wikileaks. The current turmoil in Syria, for example, which may well be the epicentre of America's next war, that in part can be traced back to a wiki leak. The Syria files exposed the darker side of the Syrian government and economy.
Do you ever feel conflicted about the consequences of the information that you've put out in the world?
No, I've never felt conflicted about that. The people have got to decide based upon what the truth is. It's their country, it's their life, it's their fate. And how can they possibly decide their fate, all the tendrils of it, unless they know what's going on?